everyone. This is the 5 p.m. Eastern Time update on Idalia. I'm going to focus exclusively on Idalia on this particular update because we have a lot of new information to walk you through. We talked about this at the noon update. There were potential for the issuance of watches, and you can see that on the map. But just bear with me 1 minute. I want to walk you through the forecast reasoning and track and intensity. Idalia is down here in the Northwest Caribbean Sea at present as a tropical storm. It's forecast to move northward over the next couple of days, so it'll be stationary for the rest of the day and this tonight, and then begin to its march northward, northeastward, approaching the Florida Peninsula on Tuesday. In terms of intensity, just a little bit of an increase in intensity than we talked about at noon. We're now forecasting peak intensity of 100 miles per hour. So this is now forecast to be a very significant and impactful hurricane approaching the Florida Peninsula on Tuesday. And for that reason, and that's why you see these new colors on the map here covering Florida, we have issued tropical storm watches and hurricane watches for the Florida Peninsula. So let me walk you through this. The yellow area is a tropical storm watch. Tropical storm conditions are possible. So that's basically Fort Myers, Chokoloskee area extending northward into central Florida. But more importantly, hurricane watches are now in effect for portions of west central Florida. So this includes the Tampa Bay region wrapping around here to about Indian Pass, Florida. So again, hurricane watches. So what does a hurricane watch mean? What does that mean for me at home? What do I do? Well, basically it means that you are beyond the watch and wait phase, and now you're in the action phase. So if you're in that watch area that I just outlined, it's time to start moving towards preparing for potential hurricane conditions. Well, what does that mean? Make sure you're in a position to protect and shelter your home with coverings for windows, secure doors. Remember that the garage door is often the weakest point in your home, so make sure you're able to secure that. Start thinking about what you're going to do with your pets. If you have to evacuate or move to a different location, start thinking about now what you're going to do with your pets. Charge your phones. Make sure your phones and electronics are charged up. Fill your vehicles up with fuel. Make sure you're topped off. And probably this is the most important one on here. So few people know whether or not they're in an evacuation zone. And evacuations may be necessary for this storm later today or tomorrow. If you are ordered to evacuate, it's imperative that you do so. But in order to do that, you have to know if you're in an evacuation zone. Now, this is just the wind component of the threat. And look how it's coming out of the cone. We talked about this earlier. The hazards absolutely will extend beyond the cone. Do not focus exclusively on the cone to determine your risk. Now, why did we put up watches with this advisory? Let's look at the timing. Let's look at the timing of when these winds could spread over the Florida Peninsula. You're basically looking at Tuesday morning for here in central Florida, west central Florida, and then late Tuesday for northern portions of Florida. So that's basically 48 hours away, and that's generally when we put up watches, when we're about 48 hours away from the onset of conditions. We've also issued, and let me zoom in a little bit here. Josh, you might have to zoom in with me. It's a little bit hard to see. Issued a surge watch. So again, similar to the hurricane watch, life-threatening surge is possible within the watch area, basically from extreme southwestern Florida all the way around to Indian Pass. Why? Well, let's look at the storm surge potential. So I'm going to start out a little bit zoomed here so you can see contextually where we're at. We're just talking about west central Florida at this point. And if I zoom in a little bit here, we can start digging at the details. You here, Tampa Bay, potential for 3 to 5 feet of storm surge. Well, what does that mean? I stand 6 feet tall. So if that forecast materialized, water would be about up to here on my chest. If we go further north, just north of Tampa Bay, 5 to 8 foot surge potential is there. And then rounding the bend here in the nature coast of Florida, potential to 7 to 11 feet of surge. Down here in southwest Florida, you're not out of the woods, 2 to 4 feet from middle Longboat Key to Chokoloskee, Florida. All right. So These are the surge values that may require evacuations in some areas. That's why it's so important that you take time after watching this video to understand if you are in an evacuation zone and listen to emergency officials and emergency managers if they ask you to take life protective action for this system. And I'm going to end here with the rainfall. We've been talking about it for several days now. We'll zoom out so you can see the whole potential here. We focus so much on Florida thus far in this update, but look at the heavy rains spreading into the southeast United States over the next several days. That's Georgia, South Carolina, and North Carolina, even reaching into Southside Virginia. Some of these heavy rains could spread over your areas, producing flooding potential. Areas here in yellow are particularly mindful. Look at some of these areas here, and there's a couple spots here in southeastern North Carolina where the potential for up to 10 inches of rain over the next several days. So again, I want to stress, if you're within these watch areas, if you're within one of those areas that I highlighted is now under a hurricane watch, it's imperative that you move beyond just watching this event and start taking action to protect yourself against those potential impacts. We will be back tomorrow with more live stream updates, and you can always get the latest information from us on hurricanes.gov.